Welcome to the Explainer. So what if I told you that during the Cold War, the United States had a top-secret plan to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but this wild plot was very, very real.
It seems like a pretty ridiculous question, right? But believe it or not, this wasn't just some crazy idea someone dreamed up. It was a serious, top-secret military plan born right out of the high-stakes paranoia of the Cold War. And the answer? Well, the answer is even more shocking than the question.
That's right. A big, fat yes. The U.S. Air Force wanted to create a mushroom cloud so huge it would be visible from Earth with the naked eye. This wasn't about science. This was pure spectacle. As the project's lead physicist Leonard Reifel later said, the whole point was a show of force that people could see for themselves.
And no, this wasn't some back-of-the-napkin doodle. This was a formal, top-secret study with a really boring official title, a study of lunar research flights. But everyone involved knew it by its much more ominous codename, Project A119.
And we know all this is real because of this very document, a 1959 Air Force report that was finally declassified decades later. And inside, it details exactly why and how they plan to detonate a nuke on the moon.
But here's where the story takes a really fascinating turn. Check out who is on the scientific team. A young PhD student named Carl Sagan. Yup, that Carl Sagan. Years before he became famous for warning the world about nuclear winter, he was literally doing the math for a plan to nuke the moon.
So the big question is, why? I mean, why would anyone seriously consider doing this? The answer is pretty simple. Pure Cold War panic and a desperate race to dominate space.
So it all started in 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. The eerie little beep from that satellite orbiting overhead sent a shockwave of fear across America. All of a sudden, the U.S. looked like it was falling behind. So, desperate for a massive PR win to prove its power, the Air Force secretly greenlit Project A119 just 1 year later.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How exactly did they plan to pull this thing off?
You know, the plan was surprisingly straightforward. They were going to launch a nuclear warhead on an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, and aim for what's called the Terminator line on the moon. That's just the border between the sunlit and the dark sides. The idea was to detonate it right there, kicking up this huge cloud of dust that would then be lit by the sun, creating a flash that would hopefully be visible from Earth. Talk about the ultimate cosmic fireworks show.
The weapon they picked out for the job was a W-25 warhead. Now, this was a relatively small nuke with a yield of about 1.7 kilotons. To put that into perspective, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima was around 15 kilotons. So, yeah, smaller, but still, an incredibly destructive nuclear weapon.
And the massive task of figuring all this out? Well, it fell to a small 10-person team of brilliant scientists at the Armor Research Foundation in Chicago. And that brings us right back to Carl Sagan. His critical job was to calculate how the dust cloud would expand in the moon's low gravity. Basically, his math would decide if the explosion would be a spectacular success that everyone on Earth could see, or a complete and total dud. The whole mission's PR goal really rested on his projections.
But, for all the planning and all the calculations, that mushroom cloud never actually appeared on the moon. In January 1959, just about a year after it began, the project was quietly canceled.
So why did they pull the plug? Well, officials ultimately realized the risks were just way too high. First off, what if the launch failed? A missile with a live nuke on it could fall back to Earth, causing an unimaginable disaster. Second, they were really worried about a huge public backlash against, nuking the moon. Third, there was the scientific concern of permanently contaminating the lunar surface with radiation. And finally, a cooler head prevailed with a much better idea. Landing a man on the moon would be an infinitely more powerful and positive statement.
The cancellation of Project A119 was actually a huge turning point. Instead of militarizing space, the focus shifted to peaceful exploration. This whole new mindset led directly to international agreements like the Outer Space Treaty, which banned nukes in space, and it all culminated in the triumph of Apollo 11. We chose footprints over craters. In the end, Project A119 is one of the most startling what-ifs of the entire Cold War. I mean, we came incredibly close to a very different kind of space race, one defined by destruction. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How would our world and our view of the heavens be different today if we had been greeted by a mushroom cloud on the moon?